Hey guys, welcome back to Naan Central. Today we're going to be making some delicious chocolate chip cookies. To start off, we're going to weigh out 125 grams of sugar and a little under a tablespoon of molasses. Keep in mind that this recipe makes about 8 to 10 cookies, so if you want more than that, you can easily double the recipe. Once we have our sugar and molasses weighed out, in a separate bowl we're going to move on to our flour, about 125 grams worth. Next to our flour we're going to add in half a teaspoon of salt and a quarter teaspoon of baking soda. Next we're going to give our dry ingredients a preliminary mixing, and here I'm using the attachment for my electric mixer because I'm going to use it later, but you could easily just use a whisk instead. Next, in a large pot, we're going to melt 7 tablespoons of butter over medium heat, which is 7/8 of a stick, and what you do with the other tablespoon of butter is completely up to you. Once the butter is nice and melted, we're going to crank the heat up to medium-high and continue to whisk until the milk solids start to brown. Again, this is really a job better suited to a whisk rather than the electric mixer attachment. Once the milk solids are nice and golden brown like this and smelling delicious, we're going to turn off the heat and add in a large ice cube. You can see here I added 2 ice cubes and that ended up being too much water. At this point the bubbling will be pretty vicious, but as long as you're using a proper whisk unlike me and you're doing this in a large pot, and assuming you've turned off the heat, you should be okay. Once the foam has dissipated and the butter has cooled down slightly, we're going to add in our sugar and molasses and mix it together, but it's not really going to come together at this point because there's not enough water, but the main goal here is to just disperse the molasses. At this stage we're also going to add in about half a teaspoon of vanilla extract, but I really just eyeballed it. The amount really doesn't matter too much. After mixing it around for a little bit, you're going to be left with kind of an oily mess, but don't worry, it's all going to come together as soon as we add in the egg. With our egg added into the pot, we're going to go to town and mix this vigorously with a hand mixer, or if you don't have one, you can just use a whisk. After about 30 seconds of mixing, we're just going to give this a break for about 3 minutes. After the rest, we're going to go back to mixing this on high speed for another 30 seconds. And after another 3-minute rest, we're going to be ready to mix this one last time for 30 seconds. At this point we can add in our dry ingredients and mix them in using a rubber spatula. Once the dry ingredients are mostly mixed in, we're going to add in about 3/4 of a cup of chocolate chips or whatever toppings you'd like. Once the dry ingredients have basically disappeared from the dough, we're going to assess the consistency and see if we need to add any flour. And as I mentioned earlier, the second ice cube did prove to be a bit too much water for this recipe, so I did have to add in another 1.5 tablespoons of flour. Keep in mind that for this recipe we are using entirely melted butter instead of just softened butter, so the consistency might be a bit looser than you'd expect. Once the dough reaches this stage where it doesn't spread out too fast, we can put it in the fridge to solidify and make scooping it out easier. After about 10 minutes in the fridge, the dough should be much easier to scoop out, and here you can see I got 8 scoops on this one tray, and I had about 2 scoops left over which I put on a toaster oven tray. After portioning, we're going to cover our tray and put this in the fridge to rest for 24 to 48 hours. Once the dough is rested, we're going to put them in the oven at 375 Fahrenheit for anywhere between 12 to 15 minutes. 7 minutes in, we're going to flip our tray around just to counteract any hot spots in the oven. Once the cookies become golden brown around the edges, they will be ready to take out of the oven. Once the cookies have rested for about 10 minutes in the tray, they should be ready to remove onto a wire rack to cool completely. And that's about it for this recipe. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next video.